Hello, and welcome to Fresh Perspectives on August 15th, 2026. Gail Erb, your host, is not able to be with us today, so she asked me if I would do a solo presentation, and I said, sure, I'll give it a try. So, my name is Dinah Hovey, and my passion is soil health and regenerative gardening. The title of our presentation today is Regenerative Gardening. Actually, it's regenerative growing, making nature your friend and not your foe when you garden. Now that term, regenerative gardening, may be new to you, but it's simply another way of saying ecological gardening. It's a way to garden that copies how nature grows things. It's a job that nature has been doing successfully for eons of years. In nature, soil is part of an ecosystem. In fact, it is an ecosystem. And in regenerative gardening, soil is treated as an ecosystem, and soil health guides all the decisions and actions a gardener takes. Now, a bit about my background. I'm currently a Master Gardener volunteer with Chautauqua Cooperative Extension Services. We are garden educators. We promote research-based information and answer your gardening questions. Cooperative Extension is a program of Cornell University, New York State's premier land grant institution. I am a lifelong gardener and resident of Chautauqua County. After my retirement from healthcare, I became interested in soil health. I wanted to have soil that was loose and easy to work. Now my soil, as most of yours is, has a high clay content. And this is good because it contains nutrients, but it tends to be a tight and compacted soil. So each spring I added compost and lots of different soil amendments and used my garden fork and turned it all in and created a nice loose soil in which to plant my seeds. But I began to notice that each fall my soil had tightened up again. Then I tried cover crops. These are crops that are planted not to eat, but to grow, to protect the soil, and to add nutrition to the soil for the next year's crop. I chose plants that were killed by cold winter weather, and I also stopped turning over my soil. So this is when my approach to gardening changed. And this is when I discovered I could create soil that was well structured. It was loose in the spring and in the fall. So let's have the next slide, please. One of the things that's wonderful about regenerative gardening is that it can help you grow very healthy plants. It can help you water less. It's something that takes the guesswork out of what you're trying to do. You let Mother Nature take the lead, and she has most of the solutions. So I'm encouraging everyone to dig in the dirt like this little girl does and to think about becoming a regenerative gardener. Next slide, please. Soil is a living thing. I'd mentioned that was an ecosystem. Well, ecosystems are living things. You can have soil that is devoid of life, and then it is dirt. But healthy soil is a thriving ecosystem. We believe that just a tiny teaspoon of garden soil contains over 1 billion bacteria, several yards of fungi, lots of protozoa and nematodes. And the interesting thing about healthy soil is that it's the biology that builds. It constructs the soil structure in a way that allows it to function biologically to the benefit of plants and the soil food web animals that live there. This healthy soil that I'm talking about can be described as being friable, and that means it's not too dense, it's not too loose, it's right in the middle, like a Goldilocks kind of soil. It'll hold together when you squeeze it. It won't get really tight and it won't get really loose. Now this healthy soil also has lots of nutrition in it, plenty of mineral nutrients. And the interesting thing about soil nutrients is that they are actually provided to plants by the action of the microbes in the soil. It's the microbes that are able to take the mineral nutrients and turn them into a form that plants can take up. We call that being bioavailable. So healthy soil is fertile. It's going to have lots of organic matter. We used to think we were feeding the plants, then we thought we were feeding the soil, but now we understand with the latest science that what we're actually doing is feeding the microbes that live in the soil. Healthy soil has to have just the right pH. pH is a level of acidity or alkalinity. At one end you have very strong acids, at the other end you have very strong bases. Now the microbes that make the nutrients available to plants function best in a slightly acidic soil. That would be at a pH level under 7, say about 6.5 to 6.8. This scale runs from 0 to 14, the 0 end being the acid, the 14 end being the alkaline, 7 being neutral. So pH is very important when it comes to can your plants use the nutrients that are there. And that's one reason why it might be a good idea when you're starting a garden, or if your plants aren't doing well, to get a basic soil test. And one of the tests that will come back is what level pH you have. Now soil, as a living thing, is dynamic. It does not stay the same. Microbe populations can expand and contract. Water levels, moisture levels can change. The aggregates, the structure of the soil can change over time. It's sort of a process that reminds us of the remodeling of bone tissue. It's dynamic, it can be stable, but it is changing. And we can have the next slide, please. Now, there's some very simple ways to tell if your soil is healthy. Without using a laboratory, just use your senses. Take a look at your soil. Healthy soil should be, in our area, a dark brown, like good coffee or dark chocolate. We do have soils that are very tan or gray or yellow, and that would mean that probably it's not a fertile soil because organic matter helps create the dark color. You all have an experience in the early spring after a rain or on a moist night where you can smell the earth. It's a sweet smell. Your soil should smell sweet, not like sulfur, and it's a good smell. If you touch your soil, does it hold together, or does it crumble easily, or can't you even turn it into a ball? You can also tell with your fingers if it's sandy perhaps or smooth like clay. Then take a look, try to find some critters. Do you see worms? They're, in our area, a good sign of healthy soil. You might also see some of those other critters, the pill bugs, the beetles, the spiders. Those are all part of the soil food web and have a place and a purpose there. Many of them are shredders that help then decompose organic matter. Now pull up one of your plants and take a look at its root system. It's the root system below that's going to support what's happening above, the growth above. You want to see large root mass. You want to see soil clinging to it. You might even see some little white threads in the soil that clings to your roots, and that might be evidence of mycorrhizal fungi. If you're pulling up a legume plant, like a bean or a pea, you often notice those little round nodules on the roots. That's where a little bacteria has decided to make its home, and that bacteria has a job to do. It's fixing nitrogen. It's taking atmospheric nitrogen and turning it into a form that the plant can use for its growth. And the interesting thing, if you take your fingernail and open one of those little nodules, if it's red, you know that it is actively doing the work of producing nitrogen. I did that this spring and I thought that was a fun thing to do. Next slide, please. This is a very important fact that science has just discovered in the past, 100 years or so. Intuitive farmers and gardeners before this might have might have taken actions that supported this relationship, but science has begun to be able to describe it for us now. Plants and microbes are BFFs. They are best friends forever. At the earliest dawn of plants, when they were transitioning from single-cell organisms in the ocean to the land, they established relationships with microbes. And most of the plants around the world form these symbiotic relationships with fungi, and those are called mycorrhizal fungi. Myco meaning mushroom or fungi, and rhizal meaning root. So this is a really interesting thing for us to know. There are very few plants that don't form these associations. We're not sure why. They must have some other adaptation or way to get the nutrients they need. But most of the things we grow are plants that have associations with microbes. Next slide, please. Here you see a picture, an electron scanning microscope picture of some plant roots that are sending out a liquid, and that liquid is called a root exudate. And that's one of the things the plant does to establish a relationship with microbes. We know that plants photosynthesize. They take energy from the sun, and they use carbon dioxide from the air and water from their roots, and they turn it into some simple sugars that they then use to make some of the other things that they need to grow their bodies, cellulose and lignin and things like that. But they take some of that photosynthetic sugar and they squirt it or exude it out their roots. Now these exudates are rich in carbon as an energy source. They may have proteins, they may have vitamins. Why do plants do this? They do it for a reason. This is an expensive undertaking biologically for a plant to do, so there has to be a reason. The plant wants to attract certain microbes that are going to help it, that are going to make food available to the plant, and in the sense of fungi, they're going to be able to bring back water and nutrients from areas far away from the plant's own root system, and they're going to help the plant stay healthy. They are involved, these microbe partners, in plant communication and plant defenses, and this is the relationship gets started by the plants. They're in charge. They produce the root exudates. They attract the fungi. The fungi then are involved in feeding and protecting and caring for the plant partners. Next slide, please. Now, bacteria are the foundation of the soil food web. There are more bacteria than there are other organisms in the soil. Everybody eats bacteria, and they eat each other, and their populations are dynamic. These especially can explode exponentially, or they can collapse, and they move by different appendages. Some have little hairs called cilia. Some have a big flat foot that goes out and back, sort of like a snail would or slug would move, and some have a whip-like kind of appendage called a flagella. But they're well dispersed in the soil, and again, everybody eats them. They're the foundation of the food web. Next slide, please. These nitrogen-fixing bacteria that I've already talked about also mineralize phosphorus. That's the term when a microbe can make a nutrient available to a plant. It mineralizes the mineral. It seems sort of redundant, but that's what's happening. In addition to those bacteria that live in roots and fix nitrogen, there are also bacteria that live freely in the soil and that can fix nitrogen as well. Now, these bacteria use their enzymes and acids to digest small particles of rock and mineral, and then they are turned into the forms that the plants can use. They're said to be mineralized. Next slide, please. The fungi are major decomposers and scavengers. You see mushrooms growing at the base of a rotting tree. That's a type of mushroom called a saprophyte, and they're very important to keep the nutrients cycling in nature, to keep that ecosystem functioning. There are also the mycorrhizal fungi, and these are the ones that grow long strands of hyphae that reach out into the soil around the plant to find minerals and water. They also use their enzymes and acids to mineralize phosphorus and other minerals. And the mycorrhizal fungi actually expand the functional area of a plant's root system. And it's the plant's root system that is so critical to providing the nutrition to the plant so that it can grow and develop. Next slide, please. Here is a close-up picture of a fragment of root, all wrapped in some white thread-like material. Those are actually the mycelia, the threads of the mycorrhizal fungi. And again, I've repeated some of the things in the slide there. They help bring food, they offer water protection, and they help plants communicate. And if you see some of those little threads on roots of plants in your garden, that's a good thing. Don't worry about it. If you see some of those threads in a pile of wood mulch that you're using, don't worry about it. It's a good thing. Mycorrhizal fungi are a good thing. Next slide, please. Some other benefits. Oh, they can help plants resist drought and be more climate resilient. It's crazy, but plants can actually exchange fungi so that a plant that is more drought resistant can share some of its fungi with a plant that is less drought resistant and help that plant survive. There are many ways that fungi help plants communicate, mostly through chemical signals, sometimes electrical pulses. They can help strengthen a plant's innate immune system so that they are more resistant to pests and diseases. These fungi create some biological glues that's called glomalin, and this helps stick together particles of organic matter and minerals into little lumps and clumps. We call them aggregates. And between the aggregates, we find pore spaces. And it's these aggregates and pore spaces that allow soil to function and to be healthy. In a healthy soil, you have about 50% organic matter, 50% mineral matter, 5% organic matter, and the other 45 or 50% is actually empty space that should be filled with water or air. So those pore spaces are critical to healthy soil, to healthy structure and function. And then also this glomalin is rich in carbon, and it helps turn into the humus factor in the soil, where carbon is sequestered long-term in the soil. Some of the root exudates, the liquid carbon that is secreted deep in the soil, and some of these mycorrhizal fungi who die deep in the soil, the carbon in those all contributes to the long-term storage of carbon in our soils, turning into humus. We know that in heavily tilled or bare soil, carbon escapes into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And this excess carbon dioxide acts as a greenhouse gas and is contributing to global warming. So the mycorrhizal fungi that are critical to sequestering carbon are one way to help us address the climate change. And you can actually be taking small steps to do this in your garden at home. So understanding the relationship, the symbiotic relationship between plants and fungi are crucial as we make decisions for producing our food and our crops. Next slide, please. Another member of the soil food web are the protozoa and nematodes. These are much larger than bacteria, and their job is to be the policemen in the soil. They help keep those bacteria in check. Without predators, the bacteria would take over. We talked about, what had we talked about? Protozoa are single-celled animal-like microbes that use various appendages to move around. They're major predators of bacteria and fungi. Nematodes are little roundworms. They don't have segments. Most of them are hard to see without a microscope. They are also major consumers in the food web. And due to their size, these critters can move bacteria and fungi to other locations in the soil. They help mix it in. So if you have a low population of these critters, your healthy isn't soil. An interesting thing about soil is as things live and die, when they die in the soil, the nutrients in their bodies also then become available for the next round of plants to grow. They actually provide a lot of the nitrogen. It isn't just coming from the air or being fixed by bacteria. When these soil food web organisms die in the soil, the nitrogen in their bodies then becomes available to be recycled. Next slide, please. More pictures of some nematodes. So on the right side, there are actual photographs, and you can see some different shapes of nematodes. Some nematodes are harmful. There are root knot nematodes that you don't want, but most nematodes are going to be helpful. And on the left, you see some diagrams and some pictures of the different shapes that protozoa can take. The amoeba is the foot-like one down on the left in blue, and that's one that some of us looked at in a microscope in our science classes in high school. Next page, please. This is an interesting photograph. There you see an earthworm, probably a night crawler. In its tunnel, it's come up to the top of the soil surface and it's grabbed a leaf. And it's going to take that leaf down into its tunnel and munch and crunch it along with some soil. Earthworms end up consuming a lot of soil along with the organic matter that they eat. So earthworms are the master shredders of the soil food web. When they decompose and eat the organic matter, they can deposit their worm castings in their tunnels. And the interesting thing about their worm castings is that they're higher in nutrient and mineral content than the surrounding soil. Their tunnels also work to create a system of channels where air and water can enter the soil, and soil has to both drink and breathe. And we talked about their tunneling action. It helps aerate and mix the soil organic matter and allows channels then left over for tender roots to explore. So earthworms are important to your garden. They're not native to our area, but in our agricultural fields and gardens, we consider them helpful. Next slide, please. Some more picture of some soil arthropods you might have seen. Top left is a millipede. Top right is a sow bug. Bottom looks like a centipede, and I don't know if that bottom right is another little sow bug. But these are important in soil to shred the organic matter, to make it into smaller pieces so then it can be attacked by the bacteria and fungi. So please don't be afraid of these little critters. If your soil is healthy, they'll be eating the dead matter, the organic matter that isn't still living. If you have unhealthy soil, you might find that they have to attack some of the living things. But in a soil that is healthy, there are balanced relationships, and these are useful and necessary as members of the soil food web. Next page, please. Oh, this is, let me take a drink here. This is a conceptual diagram of a large soil aggregate, a macro aggregate. It's an amalgam of things. They don't mix together. It's not like a salad dressing where you can shake it and get an emulsion. These things stay separate and distinct. So the orange, the broad orange structure going through the aggregate would be a root. And it is a little far away for me to see here, but the idea to take away from this is that there are a lot of things held together with some of those biological glues, but there are also lots of spaces in between for tiny bacteria to live, for water and air to come into and out of the soil. And we've already mentioned that a darker soil usually indicates a higher degree of organic matter. Next slide, please. A lot of what we're doing is reviewing some of the functions of the soil food web, because these are all members of the cast that help soil function as an ecosystem. So I've mentioned the term soil aggregation, and I've mentioned the term biological glues. Both the bacteria and the fungi make biological glues that bind together these particles of organic matter and minerals and little pieces of root and dead bugs all get bound together into aggregates. Some aggregates are big and some aggregates are small. And then you end up with some pore spaces that are big and some pore spaces that are small. And these pore spaces are so crucial. If you've ever seen soil that's cracked and dry on top, you know that that soil has been compacted. It has been squeezed together so that there are no pore spaces there. And if it rains, you notice that the rain just runs right off because there is no place for water or air to enter the soil, because it has lost its structure, it has lost its pore spaces. So we know that plant roots breathe and they exhale carbon dioxide just like we do. And if we keep carbon dioxide in an area, it turns acidic. So the carbon dioxide needs to escape. So soil aggregation and the biological glues that create it lead to pore spaces, and that all leads to soil functioning as nature intended soil to function. Next slide, please. Now, we're getting to the heart of the matter. Regenerative agriculture. These principles apply to regenerative gardening or regenerative landscaping, but there are 6 core principles. The first and most important principle is context. You need to understand what you're trying to do in your garden or in your landscape. What do you know? What do you need to know? What resources do you have? How much time do you have? How much energy do you have? So context, knowing what you want to do, I say that it answers the W's, the what, why, who, when, and there's a how in there as well of your gardening tasks. So you should always keep that in mind as you make decisions for gardening. The next principle is to minimize disturbing your soil. This can be either by using the chemicals, they disturb your soil, tilling your soil, plowing your soil, they disturb it. Applying herbicides above the soil can disturb the soil below. So you want to think about minimizing that soil disturbance. Another principle is to maximize your diversity. You want to grow as many kinds of crops as you can in a space. Modern agriculture produces things through monocultures, and those are not healthy. They are not ecosystems. We want to create an ecosystem in our garden. So you're going to add flowers. You might mix your vegetables together, but you don't worry about planting the same thing in the same place. And you may decide that you need to rotate your crops from space to space over the growing years. Another principle of regenerative gardening, gardening with nature as your ally, is to keep your soil covered. Nature abhors bare soil. That's why she plants weeds. She keeps it covered to protect the soil surface from compaction, to protect the soil surface from drying out, from being eroded away. You will notice very quickly that weeds will take over an area of bare soil. Another principle of regenerative gardening, and one that was critical to my achieving a loose soil structure, a friable structure in my raised beds, is to maintain living roots in your soil as long as you can. Now, in the Northeast, farmers often will plant a field to corn, and then they will harvest the corn, and then they will let that field stay fallow until they plant it again in the spring. Some of our farmers are double cropping. They're planting some triticale or some other things. They may get a second crop, or they may till that cover crop into the soil the next year. But if you keep living roots in the soil, they are going to be there ready to produce those root exudates as soon as the soil warms up. They're going to be there to keep the soil from eroding. So if you can add cover crops to your gardening routine, you will find not only that your soil fertility is going to increase, but your soil structure will improve as well. And for agriculture, integrating livestock back into your production system is now seen as a way that is very healthy. We got rid of our horses and our plow animals when we had easy access to synthetic fertilizers. But then we missed that source of in-house fertilization of our farms, and now farmers are looking at ways that it's healthy to incorporate livestock back into their operations. Homesteaders who have chickens or keep goats or something like that, or a llama farm, these are ways that you, as a small gardener, can reintroduce the use of animal manures and animal action. Next slide, please. Here is a definition of regenerative agriculture that is used by Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown is one of the founders of a company called Understanding Ag. He spends most of his year on the road consulting other farmers and gardeners. I recently saw him talking to some farmers in Ukraine. He is a Bismarck, Dakota farmer and rancher who out of necessity came to know about regenerative ag. But his definition is farming and ranching in synchrony with nature and ecosystem processes to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem functioning, starting with the life beneath the soil and expanding to life above the soil. So Gabe Brown farmed conventionally with lots of synthetic inputs and lots of plowing until he had several seasons of weather disasters that caused him to lose his crops, and the bank would not give him any more money. So he had to farm without fertilizers, and he became aware of and a student of regenerative practices just as I have. He's one of my heroes. What do we have as a next slide? Oh, I think this really is true. It doesn't matter if you have a small garden or thousands of acres, these principles apply. The principles of regenerative gardening are universal. They're a reflection of the way nature manages her systems. And here, again, we're talking about context. What is your context? What are your goals, your environment, your resources? Here are those W questions. What, why, where, and how will you garden? What do you want to achieve? This is the primary principle that guides the rest of your decision making. Next slide, please. We talked about the importance of keeping the soil covered. A lot of soil in our croplands washes away with the wind, with water. And another soil scientist that I follow, Ray Archuleta, says, bare soil is naked, hungry, thirsty, and has a fever. And I think that is so true. When we keep the soil covered, in agriculture, they call that armoring the soil. Think about a coat of armor. It's for protection. And cover crops or crop debris or mulch of another kind, all these can be used to keep the soil surface protected. Unprotected soil can get up to 130 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's too hot for plants to grow. That's too hot for a cow to want to put her nose down and graze. And it's an interesting thing to know that even each tiny little raindrop, as it hits the surface of bare soil, it's going to pound on it with a force of 20 pounds per square inch. And over time, that is going to collapse the soil, and there will be no more pore spaces. And then your soil can't drink, and it can't breathe, and it becomes unhealthy. So cover crops do act as mulch. And in addition, they're going to maximize your photosynthesis. They're going to add organic matter to the soil, and they're going to feed your microbes. When we see soil running off like this, it's a disaster in many ways, because that soil and that water are carrying with it excess nutrients, excess nitrogen perhaps, and phosphorus that are going to end up in our lakes, in our rivers as sediments. And these are going to, over time, cause eutrophication. They're going to support the explosion of aquatic microbes, those blue-green algae that cause those harmful algal blooms. So we don't want this to happen. We want very much to keep our soil in place where it can do the job it's meant to do. It's meant to feed plants in our croplands and not to feed harmful organisms in our water systems. Next slide, please. We talked about needing to keep living roots in our soil. Here you see a crop that has been underplanted with a cover crop. I think probably that was a grain crop that has been taken off. It's been harvested on the right side and not harvested on the left. If you think about the fact that we have 12 months in a year, if we plant a cover crop in the fall and it establishes its roots before the soil freezes, say late October, those roots are there, and anytime the soil is warming up to about 50 degrees, those microbes can become active. They can feed on organic matter that's in the soil, and once the plants begin their upward growth and producing exudates from photosynthetic sugars, then the soil food web can come alive. Microbes do go dormant. They can survive periods, extended periods without water or without food, but they can't do that forever. So this wonderful system of using cover crops, of keeping the soil covered, means that the store is always there, the pantry is stocked, and it just is waiting for the right conditions for the plants to grow and the microbes to feed on the exudates. So more and more farmers are trying some cover crops. I hope to see more of it happen. I'm promoting it as a small gardener. I use it in my raised beds. I have wonderful loose soil that grows tomato plants that are, they're taking over. It's like a jungle, and where I grow my tomato plants. So next page. We talked about wanting to have a wide variety of different plants growing, that monocultures aren't healthy. If a pest comes in and it's a pest of a certain plant and it's all that's there, boy, is that a bonanza for that pest. But if we have different plants growing, that pest isn't going to be able to eat everything. But what this picture shows is that when you have different plants, not only do you have diversity above the ground, look at the diversity you have below the ground in the shapes of those root systems and how far they reach into the soil. So it's a given, it's a premise in science that diversity equals resilience. So that's one of the reasons you want to have your diverse plant populations. You'll be having different exudates being put into the soil, attracting different microbes. You'll be providing different sources and times of flowering plants above ground to support your pollinators. Above ground, you'll have leaves that are all different shapes and sizes that are arranged on plant stems at different angles so that they can maximize photosynthesis. Because farming is really farming sunlight, if we think about it. What are we doing? Well, we're eating plants, or things that have eaten plants that have eaten plants, and these plants are making everything possible by capturing sunlight and photosynthesizing. Okay, next slide, please. We talked about minimizing soil disturbance. I find this photograph on the left very disturbing. You can see a large agricultural field, and that plume of dust, that's all soil that's going to be lost due to being thrown up into the air and carried by the winds to other places. That's some of the best soil, the fertile topsoil that we want to keep. So farming like that is continually exposing the soil to being lost by the process of mechanical tillage. Now, nature does disturb her soil, but she uses tiny excavators. She uses those worms that we've talked about tunneling. She uses those beetles and ants that move around in the soil. So those earthworms and arthropods are the kind of excavating and soil disturbance we want to encourage in an ecological gardening system. So when we limit our tillage, we're going to protect our microbes. We're going to protect our structures that the fungi have made with our mycelial exploration. We're going to protect the soil structure, and we're going to protect the organic matter. Whenever we till, we expose our soil to an increase in the oxygen level. And that causes those aerobic bacteria, the ones that breathe oxygen, to multiply very quickly. And as they multiply, they're going to eat the organic matter in the soil, and therefore there's not going to be much left if that process continues year after year. The nutrition is going to have to be provided by a synthetic input. So when you introduce oxygen by tillage, you increase your bacterial populations. They in turn consume the organic matter. And over time, that can reduce your soil fertility a great deal. Next slide, please. Oh, this is a fun slide. Mother Earth knows, but she's not tilling. Okay. On the left, you see a no-tilled soil ecosystem. On the right, you see what happens to the soil ecosystem when you do till. On the left, you see water that can come down and infiltrate and be stored in the soil. You see mycorrhizal fungi that are able to create their colonies. You see that soil is now moved off the field by the action of water. On the right side, in a tilled soil, you see more air that's going into the soil, and that increases that bacterial activity, and they're going to expire more carbon dioxide and methane. That's going to add to the climate greenhouse gases. You're going to see that the soil structure has collapsed. On the left, the topsoil looks pretty consistent in that top 6 or so inches. On the right, you can see cracking on the surface. It's called soil crusting. You can see erosion. So you're losing your soil structure, you're losing your ecosystem when you till. And you also lose your topsoil when it erodes. Next slide, please. This is the 6th principle we talked about. And farmers and ranchers are beginning to do something called high impact grazing. In the beginning of our country, when we moved west, we found those native grassland prairies where herds of buffalo and antelope would roam. They are prey animals, and so what they do is they look around and make sure there's no danger, and they clump together. So they are looking and eating, but they don't stay in that spot very long. They move on to another spot, and they may not come back to that area for a long time. So they deposit urine and manure, and their hooves disturb the soil just enough so that there's enough air to start some decomposition, but not to let it run away. And they eat down the crowns of the grasses or the crops to a level that allows them to regenerate more quickly. So these natural herds grazing on our natural prairies have some lessons for us. And ranchers are now doing high impact grazing, where they will move their cattle several times a day. We have a family member who has cattle, and he has to leave our picnics because he has to go home and get his cattle moved. But again, as a home gardener, you aren't going to have herds of cattle on your backyard, but you can keep a rabbit, you can keep chickens, you can use their manure, you can even have a worm farm indoors or a compost bin, and all those things will help you add the element of integrating animals back onto your soil. Next slide, please. Here is an example on the left of what a rancher does with high impact grazing. You can imagine, instead of seeing cattle there, that you might be seeing buffalo. And on the right, you see an example of free-range chickens that are going to be scratching and pecking, disturbing the soil a little bit, keeping pests at bay, eating insects, and it's always wonderful to have a source of fresh eggs. I have a friend who told me she just got 37 chickens. I can't imagine how she's going to handle that. We have in our family a flock of about 6, and that keeps lots of us in eggs very, very substantially. So the next page. Regenerative principles in your garden. If you choose to adopt some of these principles, you will be allowing your garden to function synergistically as an ecosystem. You're going to let nature make some of the decisions for you. You're not going to worry. Do I have to add phosphorus? Do I need sulfur? Most soil has the minerals it needs. And if we just create the community of plants and microbes and let it be, it knows what to do. So we can take a back seat. When you garden with nature as your friend, not your foe, you're letting nature be the lead. And that is good for you because it gives you more time to relax. You don't have to spend your time watering and weeding. Your plants are going to be healthy. You don't have to fight so many pests and pathogens. So you'll be able to garden with less time and effort, and that allows you more time to enjoy your garden and to do things other than gardening that are important to you. It allows you to take in a concert by the lake in the summer or go for peaches and ice cream. So when you garden in an ecological manner, a regenerative manner, you end up with soil that is loose and easier to plant in. It requires less watering and less weeding. You will find that it has on its own more organic matter, so you don't need to use fertilizers. In fact, you shouldn't use fertilizers. And let me go back a bit and tell you why. Synthetic fertilizers are water soluble, so they're immediately available to plants. And when plants have this option, they take the easy way out. They're going to eat those. They're going to take in those synthetic fertilizers, and they're going to forget for a while about their microbe friends. And some of this fertilizer that is water soluble is in a quantity, it's so much that the plant can't use it all at once. So a lot of it does get lost and moves down into the water. So you want your plants to be feeding on slow release organic content of the soil, the minerals that are there. And to do that, you need the microbes. You don't want the quick fix, the snack food. You want your plants to develop symbiotic relationships with their microbe partners. And using synthetic water-soluble fertilizers sidesteps that step And eventually, those synthetic fertilizers can build up in the soil as well as be released into the water. They can irritate your worms. So it's better off to let nature provide the food for your garden. If you garden in a regenerative or ecological manner, you will find that you do have healthier plants. You will find that they are actually higher in nutrient content than plants grown in poor soil. Your plants will have less disease and pest pressure, and again, your plants will be more nutritious. Now, an interesting thing about nutrient content in plants and your human health goes right back to those microbes. The microbes that are in the human biome, many of them are the same microbes that you're going to find in the soil. So if the microbes in the soil are making your plants healthy and providing them with nutrients, those same nutrients, if you eat as food, are going to be keeping your garden of gut microbes healthy as well. So it's a good thing all around. And I wish more of us had a garden swing like that to sit on and relax with, because gardening should be fun, but it shouldn't consume all of your time. If you have some time to spare, I would like to invite you to consider coming to some programs that the Master Gardener volunteers offer. During the months of June, July, August, and September, we offer on the third Wednesday of each month a program called Evening in the Garden. We hold this in our demonstration garden, which is located at the Jamestown Community College campus in Jamestown in front of the Science Building. We have our volunteers present different programs on gardening topics. I recently presented a program on how to create a hummingbird haven in your backyard, and we had all the participants make a hummingbird swing to use as a perch for the hummingbirds in their yards. In terms of supporting hummingbirds, again, we are wanting to create an ecosystem, to create a habitat. But we talk on other things. This month, it's on the 19th or 20th, and I know we'll be talking about tomato myths and hacks. Another topic will be on how to keep your plants watered when you go on vacation. And I can't remember the next topic. But those are always interesting. We have something good to eat and to drink, and you get to meet and talk with fellow gardeners, and there's nothing that gardeners love to do better than to talk with other gardeners. We also have a booth at the Chautauqua County Fair where we do demonstrations. It's in Floral Hall. I did my hummingbird presentation there this spring. I guess it was July. We also had a program on mosquito bucket of doom, how to create a bucket with straw and some organisms, BT, to kill mosquitoes in your yard. And then we had some activities for children. We also, during the growing season, have what's called the helpline. We are present in person on Wednesdays during the growing season at JCC from noon until 2. And we will take your calls if you call during that time. We will take calls that have been archived. You can walk in with a soil sample. We can do a quick soil sample to give you a rough idea of your soil pH. And remember, that was so important because it controls how many nutrients are available to your plants, because it controls which microbes grow at that particular pH. And it's helpful if you send pictures or photos. We don't always have all the answers, but we're pretty darn good detectives. That's one of the things we love to do. To be a good gardener, you're always learning. You're always honing your craft. And that gives us a chance to do that. I recently got a request from a gardener friend who has a relative in Utah. No, it's Colorado. And he's having not very good luck growing garlic. I grow great garlic, and from what I've determined so far, it's not that different growing garlic in Colorado as it is in New York State. So I'll be giving him some advice via email soon. So look for our programs. Come to the fair, come see us, come see the 4-H kids and their animal projects. And I do hope also that you'll consider taking up some of these principles and turning them into practices. I really was so pleased in about 2 or 3 years after I adopted using cover crops and stopping turning over my garden so vigorously, my soil really did improve quickly. And while people were watering left and right this summer during hot spells, I had very little need to water because my soil was covered with mulch. My soil had good structure so that when water did come, when rain did come, it was able to soak into it. That's called infiltration, and then be released as it needed to be. I have just found it almost a miracle how quickly using regenerative gardening practices and principles can improve your soil and get it to a point where soil's doing the work, nature is heading the team, and things are much easier for you as a gardener. I see that we have about 2 minutes left. I'm trying to think about other things that I should have mentioned. We talked about the soil food web. We talked about the regenerative principles, how context is important. I have a quote here. This is a book that I have in my library, and I recommend it to you if you are interested in becoming a regenerative gardener. It's by Jesse Frost. He lives in Tennessee, and he has a market garden. He grows vegetables to sell to farmers markets and to restaurants. And his sentiment here is one that I certainly believe in and want to leave with you. And Jesse shares, I believe that every little bit of plant and soil science you are willing to learn can improve your skills as a grower. That is so true. To be a good gardener, you need to take responsibility. You need to learn things, you need to experiment, you need to try things. And you will find that with most things in life, you're going to learn the most from the things that don't work, and that's okay. Didn't Einstein say that getting successful was mostly perspiration, not inspiration? So I welcome you to the world of ecological gardening. Please adopt some of these regenerative practices. Please contact Cooperative Extension and the Master Gardeners if you have any questions on this or other gardening topics. Thank you again, and I hope Gail will be back to see you next week, and I will see you next year for a program on fresh perspectives. Thank you.